1943, Rochester, New York. Behind chain-link fences topped with barbed wire, past armed checkpoints where guards checked credentials twice, Eastman Kodak was building something that had absolutely nothing to do with cameras. Employees referred to it only as the Lincoln facility. Residents living nearby assumed it was just another wartime manufacturing operation. Nobody asked questions. Nobody got answers, but the objects emerging from those production lines appeared completely innocent. Round, stitched, instantly recognizable to any American who'd ever played catch in a backyard. A baseball. Only this wasn't a baseball. This was a hand grenade engineered to explode the instant it made contact with anything: dirt, water, a human body, a concrete wall. The Office of Strategic Services, America's wartime spy agency, was convinced this device would transform infantry combat forever. The reasoning appeared flawless. What motion does every American male know better than any other? Throwing a baseball. Hand a soldier a grenade shaped identically to one, and he'll launch it with precision, power, and muscle memory developed since childhood. No training required, no learning curve. German defenders wouldn't know what hit them. Military procurement documents indicate contracts were issued for roughly 82,500 of these devices. The vast majority would never be completed. Even fewer would ever leave American territory. When the fighting finally stopped, this weapon, designated the T-13 Beano, had inflicted more casualties on American servicemen than on any Axis soldier. Every remaining unit was ordered incinerated. The grenade that was supposed to revolutionize warfare became perhaps the most catastrophic blunder in American weapons development history. This is how an ingenious concept transformed into a nightmare. The challenge the Beano aimed to address wasn't theoretical. It was killing soldiers every single week. American hand grenades in 1943 presented serious tactical problems. The standard issue Mk2 fragmentation grenade, soldiers called it the pineapple because of its segmented exterior, weighed nearly 600 grams. That's over 21 ounces of dense, awkwardly balanced metal. Throwing one accurately demanded a specific technique completely unlike anything most men had ever practiced. The shape fought against natural biomechanics, but weight and awkwardness weren't what kept commanders awake at night. Every infantry grenade fielded by every nation on Earth shared an identical vulnerability: delayed fuses. You yanked the pin, released the safety lever, and then waited 4 to 5 seconds for detonation. Engineers designed this delay as protection for the thrower. In practice, it handed enemies a devastating countermeasure. German troops, especially hardened veterans rotated from the Eastern Front, had perfected a technique that turned Allied grenades into Allied casualties. They grabbed incoming grenades, mentally calculated remaining fuse time, and launched them straight back. Field reports from North African and Italian campaigns described Wehrmacht soldiers plucking grenades from mid-flight. The safety feature designed to protect American throwers was actively getting them killed. British forces faced identical problems. Their No. 36 Mills bomb, the same basic design that had served since the First World War, gave enemies anywhere from 4 to 7 seconds to return fire. Literally, military planners understood that only one solution existed: an impact detonating fuse, a grenade that exploded upon striking any surface. Zero delay meant zero opportunity for return throws. But this concept had defeated weapons engineers across the globe for decades. The engineering contradiction seemed unsolvable. Any fuse sensitive enough to reliably detonate on impact was also sensitive enough to detonate when dropped, jostled or bumped during transport. Making grenades safe to carry made them unreliable in combat. Making them reliable in combat made them deadly to carry. Armies worldwide had attempted this. Every single one had abandoned the effort. The OSS believed American innovation would accomplish what nobody else could. The concept reportedly originated with Colonel Karl Eifler, commanding OSS operations deep in the Burmese jungle. According to documentation preserved at the JFK Special Warfare Museum, Eifler noticed something obvious that nobody had properly exploited. His men, like virtually every American male of that generation, had spent their entire childhoods throwing baseballs. The throwing motion was burned into their nervous systems. Automatic, precise, powerful. Professional pitchers routinely exceeded 90 miles per hour. Average men could accurately hurl a baseball 60 yards without thinking about technique. Eifler posed a deceptively simple question: Why not shape the grenade like a baseball? The OS Research Division, operating under Stanley Lovell, immediately recognized the potential. Lovell, nicknamed Professor Moriarty by colleagues who admired his devious creativity, had already developed explosive materials disguised as coal, lethal pills for captured agents, and dozens of other unconventional tools. A baseball grenade fit perfectly within the OSS philosophy of giving American forces unexpected advantages. Design requirements were exacting. The grenade had to match official baseball specifications precisely: 9¼ inch circumference, 5½ ounce weight. It had to detonate upon impacting any surface at any angle. It could not detonate during storage, transport, or the throwing motion itself, and any soldier had to be able to use it immediately without specialized instruction. Eastman Kodak won the manufacturing contract. The photography giant possessed precision machining capabilities, extensive experience with delicate mechanical assemblies, and critically, production facilities that could be converted to classified military work without arousing suspicion. Each grenade would be stamped with EKC markings, alongside the technical designations, Fuse T5, grenade. Engineers confronted the fundamental impossibility immediately. A sphere weighing only 5½ ounces couldn't physically contain sufficient explosive material, the fuse mechanism, and adequate fragmentation casing. Physics refused to cooperate. The production version weighed 12 ounces, 340 grams, more than double original specifications, still substantially lighter than the Mk2 Pineapple, but no longer a genuine baseball. The familiar throwing motion would still provide advantages, but altered weight would compromise accuracy and distance. The explosive payload consisted of 9 ounces of Composition A, an RDX-based compound, delivering substantially more destructive force than standard TNT fillings. The steel shell measured just 1 millimeter thick, engineered to shatter uniformly rather than fracturing along the preset grooves of conventional grenades. Laboratory analysis demonstrated impressive lethality. Testing recorded 6.5 fragment impacts per square foot, at 5-yard range, nearly twice the fragmentation density of comparable weapons. Theoretical performance looked exceptional. The T5 impact fuse represented the entire project's centerpiece and its fatal flaw. The mechanism was genuinely clever. Throwers gripped the grenade with 2 fingers positioned on a weighted butterfly-shaped cap, replicating the natural grip on baseball seams. A safety pin blocked premature activation. During the throw, the butterfly cap separated from the grenade body while remaining connected by a nylon tether. When the cord reached full extension, it extracted a secondary arming pin from the fuse assembly. The grenade was now armed. Any contact would trigger immediate detonation. OSS specifications demanded reliable detonation when dropped from just 18 inches onto soft rubber. This hypersensitivity guaranteed explosion upon hitting any surface: soft earth, shallow water, enemy soldiers, anything. It also guaranteed disaster if anything malfunctioned during throwing. Testing commenced at Aberdeen Proving Ground in late 1943 before relocating to Fort Benning. Initial results appeared sufficiently encouraging that on June 2, 1944, just 4 days before Allied forces stormed Normandy, procurement officials authorized full-scale production. The Lincoln facility ramped up manufacturing. Then soldiers started dying. The T5 fuse exhibited dangerous oversensitivity. Early production samples detonated when dropped from merely 6 inches, 1/3 of design specifications. Personnel at Aberdeen suffered wounds from grenades that exploded during routine handling exercises. 3 servicemen sustained injuries before protocols were hastily revised to mandate extreme caution whenever live grenades were moved. But accidental drops weren't the deadliest defect. The throwing motion itself was killing people. If a soldier's grip on the butterfly cap faltered, or if fingers slipped during the throwing motion, the cap could jerk the arming cord prematurely. The grenade would arm while the thrower still held it. The natural follow-through of the throwing motion would then slam the armed grenade against the thrower's own torso. On November 3, 1944, a civilian test technician at the Proving Ground threw a grenade straight upward to evaluate fuse performance. The device armed during ascent. It descended directly onto his skull. He was killed instantly. Now, before continuing with what followed, if this story has captured your attention, take a moment to subscribe. It costs nothing, takes 1 second, and directly supports this channel's growth. Alright, back to the Beano. Despite the fatality, military leadership pressed forward. Combat continued raging across multiple theaters. The tactical requirement for impact detonating grenades remained critical. Engineers developed revised fuse versions designated T5E1 and T5E2, attempting to decrease sensitivity without sacrificing reliability. In February 1945, approximately 10,000 grenades shipped to European combat zones for operational evaluation. The outcomes proved catastrophic. Military records document that field trials involved 2,742 grenades thrown under actual combat conditions. 10% completely failed to detonate. 1 out of every 10 grenades simply thudded against the ground and lay there, either permanent duds or delayed reaction bombs waiting to kill whoever investigated. Failures concentrated around specific environmental conditions: soft terrain, mud, snow, standing water, sub-freezing temperatures. The fuse mechanism was seizing up in European winter conditions, preventing firing pins from striking detonators with adequate force. But duds weren't the gravest concern. 5 grenades detonated prematurely, not upon ground impact but during the throwing motion itself. Testing documentation and subsequent analyses report 2 fatalities and roughly 44 wounded from premature detonations during evaluation trials alone. On March 22, 1945, General Joseph Stilwell commanded immediate cessation of all testing activities. 7 days later, production halted entirely. On June 15th, with European hostilities concluded and Japanese surrender imminent, orders arrived demanding complete production termination and destruction of all existing inventory. The Beano was finished. Final accounting tells a damning story. According to research compiled by Dr. John Brunner, author of the authoritative reference work on OSS weaponry, the T-13 Beano grenade killed and wounded more American personnel during development and evaluation than it ever harmed enemy combatants. The weapon engineered to provide American soldiers decisive advantages instead threatened the soldiers carrying it. One specialist publication summarized the situation without diplomatic softening. The Beano holds the unfortunate distinction of having inflicted more casualties among American forces than among enemy forces. Certain sources claim limited battlefield deployment during Normandy operations in June 1944. This assertion remains unverified and contradicts other documentation. Expert ordnance references note uncertainty regarding whether the Beano ever saw genuine combat action, though unconfirmed reports suggest limited distribution to invasion forces. No confirmed enemy casualties appear anywhere in archival records. The dramatic narrative of terrified German officers confronting unstoppable American baseball grenades appears to be contemporary myth-making. Exhaustive examination of military archives, declassified intelligence, and veteran accounts has produced zero evidence of German awareness of or response to the Beano. The legend creates compelling drama. The documented history teaches more valuable lessons. The Beano failed because impact fuses for hand grenades present inherently dangerous engineering challenges. The requirement for detonation upon any contact fundamentally conflicts with the requirement for safety during normal handling. Every modification increasing reliability simultaneously increased sensitivity. Every modification improving safety introduced failure modes. The British addressed the problem by refusing to attempt solving it. The Mills bomb retained time delay fuses throughout the entire war. British soldiers mastered the dangerous technique of cooking off grenades, holding them briefly after releasing the safety lever before throwing to minimize time available for return throws. Risky, certainly, but predictable. The weapon behaved consistently. German engineers pursued different solutions. The steel hand grenade, the distinctive stick grenade, used its handle to increase throwing range through mechanical leverage rather than altering grenade geometry. The wooden shaft provided distance advantages without requiring fuse modifications. German soldiers outranged Allied grenades while maintaining time delay safety. The American approach demonstrated the most creativity and the greatest danger. Matching weapon ergonomics to human instinct represented genuine innovative thinking. The baseball concept wasn't foolish, it was visionary. But 1940s manufacturing technology couldn't produce a fuse mechanism capable of distinguishing intentional throws from accidental impact. It's worth acknowledging that the OSS produced numerous successful innovations throughout the war. From intelligence tradecraft to resistance network support, the organization compiled an impressive record. The Beano represented an exception rather than the pattern, but it remains a powerful illustration of how even brilliant concepts collapse when available technology cannot fulfill ambitious requirements. Contemporary impact grenades exist. They employ electronic fuses containing accelerometers that detect the specific acceleration signature of throwing motions versus drops or bumps. The technology that would have made the Beano viable lay decades in the future. Surviving T-13 specimens are extraordinarily rare. Destruction orders were comprehensive. Examples remain preserved at the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Museum at Fort Liberty, North Carolina. Housing artifacts from the Brunner Collection, the Spyscape Museum in New York City displays a Beano within its World War II espionage exhibits. Private collectors occasionally acquire verified examples, with prices typically ranging from $2,000 to $3,000. Stanley Lovell, the OSS research chief who championed the project, addressed its failure in his 1963 memoir. He acknowledged the weapon never achieved its intended potential. Conceptual brilliance couldn't overcome technological limitations. The Beano's legacy offers a timeless lesson regarding innovation, exceeding engineering capability. The underlying concept was valid. American soldiers genuinely could throw baseball-shaped objects farther and more accurately than awkward pineapple grenades. Impact detonation genuinely would prevent enemies from returning grenades. The insurmountable problem was that 1944 manufacturing couldn't produce a fuse reliably distinguishing enemy contact from friendly fumbles. Contracts for hundreds of thousands of units, roughly 10,000 shipped for evaluation. 2 Americans killed by premature detonations, approximately 44 wounded. 0 confirmed enemy casualties documented anywhere in historical records. The innocent American baseball designed to terrify German defenders killed Americans instead. The ingenious design exceeded the technological capabilities of its era. The weapon secretly manufactured by Eastman Kodak inside an anonymous facility in Rochester, New York, became among the most catastrophic failures in American weapons development. Sometimes the most brilliant ideas are simply the ones that haven't become possible yet. The Beano was one of them.